Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Album Fight Club. I am here as always. I'm your host, Mike Kane. I'm here with my co-host, Cody Boagrius Constantine. Cody,
Oh, there
how
it
we
is.
doing? How we doing, Cody?
Mike, today is a fantastic day. Beautiful weather out here in sunny North Carolina. I get to talk to one of my best friends. And today we get to talk about one of my favorite bands. But before we get into that, Mike, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm feeling great. It's not so much sunny here. It's a little cloudy, overcast. We just got through Little Debbie, so we're doing okay over here. How was Debbie for you?
It was somewhat intense. Where I work at, we have like a parking garage, and they actually shut down the first floor of the parking garage, which was very interesting. I had never experienced that. A little bit of flooding in the area, but thankfully we didn't experience anything here. At one point, I was worried that our apartment was going to catch on fire, but that's simply because it was just so much wind happening that saw a couple of the apartment's lights go out. And I was like, I sure hope there's not an electrical fire. But it didn't happen. I am standing here today ready to talk about, once again, one of my favorite bands of all time, the legendary Converge.
Indeed. And Cody, honestly, I should mention that this was very much a you pick. I'm sure we'll get into how we both feel about Converge. Really, this was at the forefront of Cody's mind. I like Converge. If you have listened to previous episodes of ours, you'll know that at one time we did The Chariot. I feel the same way about Converge as I do The Chariot, which is I'm a huge fan of heavy music, dude. I love it. I've loved it since I've been in high school. But there comes a point where heavy music gets too heavy. And for a long time, Converge was in that sphere. I'll point out the two records we're doing, if you happen to know Converge, we're doing Jane Doe. Of course, you have to do Jane Doe. And the second choice is You Fail Me. And Cody will explain why that was the second choice. But just so I can get my intro out of the way of how I feel about Converge, at some point in my career of metal music, you eventually stumble across Jane Doe. It's going to happen at some point. And I don't remember when it happened for me. All I remember is I heard Concubine, which is the opening track. And like a minute into it, I was like, I can't do this, dude. Like it is so just a step above things like Slayer, Metallica, your general metal. It's even, to me at least, a step above even heavier music like Death or Between the Buried and Me. Like it's a step above them in terms of just like sheer frenetic energy and heaviness. And so I heard Concubine like for a minute. I was like, I cannot do this. And I did not revisit Converge for probably years. And then out of the blue, Cody, who I've known pretty well at this point in time, he goes, "Hey man, I'm going to see Converge. Would you like to come? I've got another ticket." I forget what the situation was, Cody. You can certainly talk about it more. And I was like, it's a concert and I enjoy going to concerts, whether I love the band or not, but fuck, man, it's Converge. Like, I'm probably going to break a bone if I go to this concert because I know Converge enough to say, like, I've never met many Converge fans, but I assume all of them want to like kill somebody in the pit. So I was like, I'm a little skeptical, but I'm going to go with you, Cody. And we did. And Cody was right at the front and I was at the very back of the performance hall. And they put on a great show. Like I was really impressed, really loved it. But even in spite of that, after seeing that concert, I think I listened to Jane Doe all the way through. I was just like, I was good on it. I was good. I didn't see it as any like amazing thing, but that's just my personal taste. Which leads us to this, which is Cody said, "Hey man, let's do Converge. Let's do Jane Doe versus You Fail Me." And I was like, all right, Cody, I got to throw you a bone once in a while because little insider baseball here. I'm going to tell you folks, at least 15 of the episodes have been my choices and like 3 or 4 of them have been Cody's. So I got to throw Cody a bone once in a while. So Cody, what is Converge to you?
So I actually had a very similar introduction to Converge. My best friend, when I was like about 16, we were driving somewhere and he said, "Oh, hey, I heard this song. I think it's dog shit. You should check it out." And he played it in the car and it was Concubine. So when I was 16, I had never heard anything that sounds like this. This is like Halley's Comet, man. It just flies past and you either catch it or you don't. And so it kind of piqued an interest in me because all of the heavy music I had heard at the time was more structured. right? It was really like it had an intro, it had a middle part, there was a breakdown, had an ending. And you hear Concubine and you kind of go, what did I just hear? How did this happen? Who did this? And so I slowly got into Converge. Doing my first listen through of Jane Doe, I remember feeling sick at the end, like just because if you have not heard something this like unrelentingly heavy, like you were getting pummeled in the face for 45 minutes, you can't stomach it. But then what had happened was I got to the end of Jane Doe and I felt relieved that I had allowed myself to experience something so abrasive, like something so visceral. And that as I got older and more acquainted with this type of music, You Fail Me actually became my favorite heavy record ever. You Fail Me is a record that I hold above everything else. It's not my favorite record of all time, but whenever it comes to the conversation of like pure heavy music, and I don't mean hardcore or punk or things like that, I mean once we get into Death, once you get into Nails, into Slayer, into things like that, things that you might scare a parent, right? You Fail Me, every time I listen to it, it moves me into this state of almost like of unrelenting euphoria, because it's right after Jane Doe, but it showcases this level of intensity, but also a willingness to create more tension. And so, in an effort to hopefully introduce Mike to to another Converge record, I said we should do Jane Doe versus You Fail Me, because both of them, at least on my opinion, stand as these bizarre little masterpieces in heavy music. To talk about Jane Doe for a moment, if you listen to Jane Doe and you look at everything else that comes out around this time, right, in music, especially in hardcore and in heavier music, nothing is this. Nothing is this. It's the year, I believe, 2000. We're knee deep in new metal, right? So we've got Deftones and Korn and all those guys, right, Mike?
Indeed.
Yeah. So, and then you get this, which is personally, Jane Doe might be the greatest example of fury encapsulated, and it just crushes everything else. And if you look at the scene of heavy music that comes later, if you look at this landscape of it, people start to get gnarlier, and it starts to become a little more dangerous once you get Jane Doe. And then they don't release music for like 4 years. They just tour. They tour. Jane Doe becomes the record for a lot of people in terms of like heavy music. And then they decide to record You Fail Me, which is, like I said, the record that follows immediately. Now, for people listening at home, we are using the You Fail Me Redux, which came out in 2016, where they actually went in and Kurt Ballou, who plays guitar in Converge, and he also owns God City Studios, he reamped and remastered the entire record. He adjusted some levels and things like that, and then they re-released it with actually a song that was exclusive to the Japanese version of You Fail Me, which is Wolves at My Door. And so to make it a fair comparison, I combined First Light, Last Light to face Concubine, and then Wolves at My Door to make it an even 13. But what I love about You Fail Me is, in some ways, it's gnarlier. In some ways, it feels like it's holding back all of the fury that Jane Doe has. And there are just these moments where it peaks right through. And when those moments peak right through, dude, it's like getting your jaw ripped off. It's like you're stuck in this like Hellraiser landscape where you're just in saw traps going off. You don't get to experience pleasure. And in my opinion, not to drone on about this, to actually get to the matchups in a moment, but I think that music like Converge is some of the bravest art that can exist. because as people, we are allowed to experience happiness and joy and brightness, right? A lot of music is bright. But to have something that is so viscerally aggressive, so unrelentingly aggressive, that it almost makes you shake, right? It's like getting into your first real argument with someone and getting into your first real fight where it's like, I'm going to have to hit this person. It's the after effect of like, wow, I feel something that I've like never felt before. And so that's why I wanted to do Converge, because we've done a lot of heavy music. I think Converge sits at the top of heavy, of atom smashing heavy. And so that's why I wanted to discuss about Converge today.
Yeah, if I could say two things before we get to the matchup. When I talk about Rain and Blood by Slayer, which most listeners will know is one of my favorites, I've talked about it several times at this point. When someone's like, okay, can you define this record for me? Usually I say, it's like you're a punching bag for 30 minutes and you've got this heavyweight boxer just unloading on you. And I think that's kind of accurate when it comes to Rain and Blood. It's a very frenetic, heavy, fast record and it doesn't let up. Converge is like, okay, you've got a serial killer with a chainsaw and he is going to just rip you in half with it. Like, it is such a higher level of it that you've summed it up very well in terms of like what it is. But one of the things I like that you said very early on was it's like Halley's Comet, right? It's fast, it's bright, it flies by, and if you miss it, you miss it, right? Which is a very apt reasoning here, because Halley's Comet, I don't remember how many years it takes for it to come back around, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you miss it, well, you got to wait several years, if not like decades, I think, at this point.
I think it's like 30 years.
Yeah, right. It's a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a very apt comparison because, Cody, I've never seen Halley's Comet in person, right? Whenever it's come around, I don't really care enough to see it, to put it blunt. Yeah. But I think it's an apt comparison because this time, this matchup, Cody, I fucking saw Halley's Comet, dude.
Let's go.
These two records are so goddamn good, Cody. And I don't know what it was. Like I said, it's one of those things where like I heard we went to see Converge and I listened to Jane Doe and I was like, yeah, it's just not really for me. Bro, this time I went through it. I'm like, bro, this is one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life, dude. Go ahead.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is exactly what I wanted, because just like dangerous art, right? You're supposed to not like it. You're supposed to not like it. There's a reason. I make a couple of comparisons to a movie that Mike and I have talked about personally, but to the movie Hostel. If you don't get that movie, it's the worst hour and 30 minutes of your life, dude. I hate that movie. But I hate it because it has stuck with me. It made such a visceral reaction due to what happens in the movie, to where I haven't seen Hostel in 15 years and I still think about it on a weekly basis, just in comparison to other horror movies, other intense media, right? Once you start to understand what is happening, it is some of the most beautiful, potent showcases of human emotion that have ever happened. And I truly believe that to feel things like the Abbey Road melody, and to feel things like A Day in the Life, and to feel things like Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Wish You Were Here and Dark Side of the Moon, you also have to feel this. This is the encapsulation of, like I said, unrelenting fury and unrelenting passion. Because you don't make this to make art. You don't make this to make money. You make this to leave a statement as an artist and say, I've made my piece. Beat it. Try it, you know?
Yeah, it's very much not approachable music at all. And even someone like me, who is a heavy metal fan, even I would approach this for years and be like, no, it's not for me. I can't consume this in any meaningful way. But with enough willpower and enough tries, here I am. And let me be clear. I think both these records are phenomenal. But one of these, I'm damn willing to call, like, it's now in like the top 20 records like I've ever heard. Like I don't know top 10 yet. I think with enough listens it may get there, but right now one of these things is like pushing top 20 material. Like it's that good.
Yeah. It is. Well,
So
Mike, I
why
say
don't
we get into it.
Get to those. Yeah, exactly.
Why don't we do it?
And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on these, Cody, because you are the longtime Converge fan. I'm more of like the new apostle. Like I've just come into this, but I still have strong feelings about some of these songs. But you get the matchup of Concubine versus First Light, Last Light, and Concubine is like the Converge song. At least to me, it is. As the person who's been on the outside for so long, it's like. I don't know. It's like the song you just get told to listen to when you get recommended Converge. And like I said, it's not approachable at all. It is, I don't even know how to describe it, honestly. It's like, just like, you get the guitar plucking notes at the beginning, and then it's just like a dam looses, and it's just a flood of water. And it just washes over you. And this song's not that long. It's under 2 minutes in length. But man, does it just like make an opening statement for Jane Doe and what you're going to get with the rest of it. I mean, it's especially Jacob Bannon, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot about him, who is the vocalist of Converge and sort of like the pariah of Converge. He's like the main person, really.
Yeah.
His performances on both these records, but in particular, Jane Doe, I mean, it is like a flamethrower is coming out of his mouth. He just spews fire like he's a dragon. And for the longest time, the vocals really turned me off to this. I mean, I like heavy vocals. I like growling and screeching and pig squeals and all the rest, right? But there comes a point where it like kind of becomes oddly pretentious to me. And for a while, I was like, man, he's just like making noise. Like I will say, despite how many times I listened to these records, 90% of the lyrics on both these albums, I couldn't tell you what he's saying. Like, I just still don't know. But I don't think that's the point, right? I've often heard described, and I often describe it this way to people who don't like metal music when it comes to like growling vocals. I'm like, you just have to think of it as another instrument in the band. Like it's just adding color and flavor. Because, I mean, I've heard Colors by Between the Buried and Me at least 50 times. I couldn't tell you every single lyric, right? I've heard enough of it now to where like I know what he's saying. But there's some instances where like I just don't know. On Concubine, I don't really know a lot of what he's saying, but man, is it like making me grit my teeth and throw up the horns and etc. It just like, it comes in, dude. Whereas opposed to First Light, Last Light, what's interesting here is that even though it is the record following Jane Doe, it is such a stylistically different approach. I mean, First Light by itself is just like this sort of lovely guitar intro of just like, I see it as like the sun rising. I mean, it's called First Light, so it makes sense that it's like the sun coming up over the horizon. But Last Light to me also feels like the sun continuing to go up through the horizon. It doesn't feel like sunset to me, which maybe that's what they were going for. I don't particularly know. But even on Last Light, like, holy shit, I understand what he's saying now because he's using like clean-ish vocals. There's still some like gnarliness to it. But Last Light has some real propulsion to it. It's a driving force. The drums are constantly moving this thing forward. But one of my favorite moments in Last Light, and Cody, I'm going to give you the floor in a second. I know I'm going off here. One of my favorite moments in Last Light is where everything slows to like a crawl. And it's just that drum pattern of the boo boo ch boo ch boo and the guitar's just boom boom barrel, boom boom barrel. Like it's such a cool choice to do that when everything before that was just going at 80 miles per hour. And then I think this also has I could be wrong. Is this the one where it has that like quarter note ending where it's like the barrel, 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 barrel? Yeah, like very cool way to like lead the song out. So very sort of 3 beginning, middle, end, different sections throughout. I love when musicians do this. Concubine has differentiation to it, but it's not like huge differentiation that First Light, Last Light has. In spite of that, however, I'm giving the edge to Concubine solely because 1, it is like the Converge song. 2, man, it just rips your face off in like the opening act of this thing that's going to continue to rip off the muscle and your skull and your brain matter as it continues. And 3, it's just so batshit insane that it kind of makes you laugh. Like it's so ridiculously insane that it's cool. So I did go with Concubine here.
I have always introduced the concept of Jane Doe. It's got a story. I'm not too sure what the concept of the record is. My interpretation of Jane Doe has always been a burn victim is waking up from a coma and they are experiencing cell regeneration. Because some of the things that we hear later in this record, the only way I could even make sense of them is someone was in a house fire and they found me after the fire was out, and now I am sitting in an ICU. Every time I wake up, I am experiencing cell regeneration. That's what those vocals sound like to me. We're gonna talk about Jake a lot because he really does a showcase of noises and a showcase of feeling. There is no other single moment of music history that sounds like Concubine, where it starts out like Mike said with that do da do da do da do da do da do da do da, and then once the band comes in, it is like, dude, you're stuck in the middle of a fucking microcell hurricane, dude. Everything is happening all at once, and then you think like, oh, that's just the way we're doing it. And then you get that drum roll, everything drops out for a split second, even you get that ba-da-da-da, and then Jake Bannon comes in with in my opinion, the greatest vocal performance of all time, of sheer passion. Just him screaming, and what he is screaming is, "I'll stay gold." The lyrics that are in the booklet for Jane Doe are these beautiful, well-written lyrics. This whole song, he just screams, "I'll stay gold. I will stay gold." And at the end, he says, I'll stay gold forever. Because this song is about an argument. And the lyrics that are written down are everything that you want to say during an argument. All of the post-argument thoughts, right? Oh, I should have said this. I had this great point. But when you're in the fury of the moment and your blood is pumping, all you are going to be able to say is what is in the forefront of your mind. Which I think is so absolutely incredible, because you listen to this with the knowledge and it's like, that's what it sounds like when I'm in the middle of a confrontation. I wanted to say so much more, and all I can say is I will stay gold. In comparison, and then I want to make note of this, the way that Concubine ends, both of these records, on my notes, I have these written analogies of how they make me feel. Concubine makes me want to throw a brick through someone's face and then spit in the hole. And we are not even into the record. We're a minute and a half into Jane Doe. Perfect. No, nothing will ever be this, and nothing will ever touch it. This is what I think people who want to get into heavy music should experience first. Get it all out of the way, Get every spice out of the way, and then find what you like and pick from there. Where, in comparison to First Light, Last Light, I appreciate that it's more of a almost like contentious relationship between the musicians and the song, right? You start out with that wonderful ambient guitar opening with Kurt Blue playing those beautiful chords, and then the rest of the band comes in, but it's not so blistering at first. You're building, we are stacking tension. Slowly things are getting louder and getting bigger. The bass comes in, and the bass tone on this record, dude, nail me to the fucking floor. Stick my head in front of a speaker. That's all I want to hear for the rest of my life. And you're getting all of this fantastic tension until you get to this moment right before the song ends, where it's one of my favorite lyrical sections of all time, where Jake Bannon says, "And this is for the hearts that are still beating and beating and beating." And he does this scream, and it sounds like somebody accidentally pressed the big red button. Because the way that the ending of First Light, Last Light happens, dude, if Concubine made me want to throw a brick through someone's face, this is me stomping the brick that I made into a paste and then calling their family. I am feral when this song happens, because in comparison to Concubine, all of that build, and it's like, don't drop the ball, and then they don't. And you get this section at the end of the breakdown where it's the big notes, and then the guitar drops down into the lower tuning, into the lower note, and it's like the floor is shaking. I am an earthquake. Watch me rise. So good. I love Concubine, but personally, First Light, Last Light takes it just because I feel like it builds to something comparable. And I just love the way that this whole song flows. And there are moments, because you expect, right? Just like probably Mike went through on his first listen. You get to Concubine, and you're like, damn, how are they going to follow this up? How are they gonna knock out what I just heard? And then, dude, you get to Fault and Fracture. Bro, if you think you have had all of your skin ripped off, no, brother, this is the beginning. You were getting a scalpel through the tissue now. And it's so unbelievable, dude. Right into the pits of hell. Because the way the Jane Doe flows, these like first 3 songs are just back to back to back. You don't get a break. You don't get a breath. And it's like, it's so, in a way, if you have not listened to heavy music, this shit's scary. Because you imagine yourself watching it live, and all I see is it's just red in blood. There is no room for children here. This is a problem. Everybody here is a problem, and I am now a part of the problem because I want to step into that pit, and I want to take someone's jaw off now because it moves so viscerally. Is that how you feel about Fault and Fracture?
Yeah. To audio listeners, when Cody brought up Fault and Fracture, I just kind of like had this head shaking moment of approval because, as Cody mentioned, Concubine and Fault and Fracture just flow right into each other, and Fault and Fracture just like opens the fucking gates of hell. Like, the intro is so heavy. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so heavy, and you just got like the flamethrower that is Concubine. This is the napalm that comes right after it. Like, but God, is it so good? Like, that intro is insane. It's so good. Fault and Fracture just like, it blows my socks off every time I hear it. And especially there's this portion around like the 45-second-ish mark where they just go into these like quarter notes. And the Chariot would do this too, where it would just be like boom, boom, boom. But man, when you do that with Jake's vocal delivery, it just, for me, takes it to something else. We're like we mentioned on the Chariot, but I'll revisit for a second. Like, I liked a lot of the Chariot, but since we've done that episode, I haven't really revisited the Chariot that much, maybe once or twice. This, though, like, I hear this, and it's just as heavy, just as loud, just as, like, teeth gnashing and knuckle cracking, and I go, I want to hear this. The second that passes, I'm like, play it back. Play that for me once again, because I want to like punch harder this time. I want to kick harder. I want to put a hole through the wall that's twice as big as the one I just put into it, right? Fault and Fracture is absolutely mental. It is complete mental. But, Cody, this actually, I think, is one of my hardest matchups to do. Because then, on the other side of the ring, you got this dude called Black Cloud, and he comes in, and he's doing that, like, that fist to the knuckle thing. He's like, all right, you want to throw down?
Oh, yeah.
He comes swinging. Dude. There's this part in Black Cloud where I don't know if it's the chorus, right? I don't even know if the song has a chorus, but there's this part where the drummer is hitting the bell of the ride cymbal. And he's doing his, the basic thrash, like boop, 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 but he's doing it on the ride, on the bell of the ride, which, if you don't know, on a cymbal, there's like this portion that's like the dome part. That's called the bell. So when you hit that, it makes like a teeny sound.
Yeah.
And Jacob's just doing this like, bop, 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 bop. I'm not going to try and mimic Jacob's vocals. It's going to sound terrible, but he's doing that pattern of like, bop, 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 bop.
Yeah.
It's one of the coolest sounding things I've ever heard, dude. It is unreal. I don't know how to describe a lot of it, and I'm going to say it like that a lot. I don't know how to describe this other than to say it's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. But the way you just like bring in that ride bell thing, like that's such a nice touch to it. And then the peak performance of Jake on top of it, it just like takes it to a whole other level. So actually, this was a huge struggle for me, was these two songs. So when it came down to choosing one, I was like, okay, which song has like the more memorable moments for me? Which one am I going to remember longer when I leave it? And it's tough to say, but it did end up being Fault and Fracture. Because while Black Cloud has like one of the coolest things I've ever heard in that ride section, Fault and Fracture, I remember hearing that when we did this exercise again, and I was like,
yeah,
how did I not love this the first time I heard it? It was one of those moments. Like, how did I ever think this wasn't good? And it just had such a huge impact on me the second I heard it, and it continues to have such a huge impact on me every time I hear it since. To be fair, Black Cloud does too, but I think what Fault and Fracture does for the whole opening of Jane Doe, I think it gives it a little more leeway. So I went Fault and Fracture.
I totally agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Where Black Cloud has a little more structure to it, and I will admit, I have blown out the speakers in my car, volume up, shouting at the top of my lungs, Black Cloud fading, because it's so what people you're not seeing, because we're together on camera, but what you're not seeing through the audio is that Mike and I are both experiencing this bout of pure passion where it's almost indescribable what we've heard and the sensation that it has made us feel. But just like the passion that we are feeling, that is my argument for these two records. You are not gonna get it until you do. It's kind of like falafel in a way. Eventually, like one day you're gonna have it and you're gonna go, where have I been on this? I didn't like the texture and now I love it. I didn't like that it's this guy screaming so incomprehensibly that it's making my head hurt, and now I adore it, right? I want to introduce it to people because art has to be brave. But yeah, no, 1,000,000%, dude. Both of these songs are no joke. Hard as fuck, make me want to kill somebody. Make me want to, if feral. I know people joke around with the word feral. They make me want to run off into the woods and kill a bear. Like one-on-one, just like break its neck, dude. But Fault and Fracture it sends me into a tailspin. I hear this song. When we saw them live and they played Fault and Fracture, I went dizzy. Because I was like, I'm standing at this barricade, and the one thing that stopped me from being a public menace was there was a 13-year-old girl to the right of me. If she had not have been there, I would have been a war criminal. It would have been I would have devastated someone. We're at song 2, which is crazy, right? And now we get to song 3, which is the end of this fantastic first run of Jane Doe with Distance and Meaning against Dropout. So we're at song 3 on these records. And what I love about Distance and Meaning is they do this really smart choice, right? They pull back the volume, but they're still doing this like real spazzy intro thing. And it's like who accidentally turned the dial from Slayer to Frank Zappa? How are we blending these two mixes of weird, like, acid rock? But then you're like, oh man, this is nice because it's not soul-crushingly heavy. I don't feel like I'm trapped in a parallel dimension of sheer torture for pleasure. And then they're like, psych, heaviest thing you've ever heard. The only thing that I dislike about Distance and Meaning is that it follows too much structure in comparison to the two songs before it. It's like, it felt like a decision of like,
Absolutely.
Hold on. Yep. It's like, hold on, we have to get the train going now. And it's like, we're 3 songs in, let's do it. Where in comparison to like Dropout, it's these weird, like, super positive chords for a second. You get these big chords in the beginning, and it's like, what is happening? Why is this so spastic too? And they are just pulverizing you. And then you get to the middle of that song and they do this like, it's like this slow guitar thing where it's just the guitar, but it makes you feel sick. Like every time I hear it, it makes me feel like I just popped a wound and there I can smell pus. And then it's like, then the fucking ending comes and we're in hell again and the wound is reopened and I'm on a surgical table and I'm just like, how does this happen? How do you create this? Tell me. Mike and I have both listened to music that is so well structured. On the complete inverse of this, we have Colors, a record that might be damn near impossible to replicate because of how well it was created. Single moments happen in Colors that you're not going to hear for the other 63 minutes, you know? Whereas this, it's like, how do I feel this way about something? How can I make myself feel this level of pure white heat, you know? This is the distance from being in the atmosphere to burning up on impact. This is the fire. I don't know. It's like hard to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said earlier, there's times where I literally can't describe it. I'm just like, I don't know how to describe this thing. Distance and meaning, though, I like what you said in that it's got a lot of structure, right? It follows a pattern, which my note literally says feels kind of samey, especially after the first two songs. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately the downfall of Distance and Meaning in this matchup, which is to say, like, Distance and Meaning is still good. The drum work in particular is like slick. I really like the drums on this song, but so much of the song feels kind of like we're just like turning a wheel. It's like, yep, it's just turning the wheel to get to the next couple songs. Whereas Dropout, really, I mean, to me, it feels like a wrecking ball, which so much of this does feel like a wrecking ball, admittedly. But there's this build in Dropout that happens that like really elevates the sort of like ferocity and heaviness. It's just like building to that moment of like, okay, how is this going to drop? And I think that build is great. And it's different than what we've heard so far on the rest of You Fail Me. So this matchup actually was pretty easy for me. I like Distance and Meaning. I think it's cool, but I think Dropout does take it.
Yeah. And then from a technical standpoint, the guitar lick that's happening at the end of Dropout is crazy. He's playing it like 1,000 miles an hour. He's like Kerry King on 5 Red Bulls. That's how fast this lick is. And it's such a good lick. The one that ends the song. It's like, how do you play that fast? And then also pull the floor out from under me. Mike, would you like to introduce the next matchup?
Sure, because when you get a complaint like the third song of Jane Doe being too samey, right? You get these first 3 songs and they're all fast and they're all heavy. It's like, man, is this the whole record? Just like fast, frenetic, energy, pulverizing? You get to Hell to Pay. And it's like the battlefield has been riddled with bullets. There's blood everywhere. There's guts, viscera, dead bodies. Like you're just like standing there with your rifle and you're just like, God damn, like what just happened? Yeah. And like, I'm setting the scene because this song is so cinematic to me. I think this song is like so well done in its cinematic nature. I literally see this idea of like this lone soldier who's like the last one left. And he's just like huffing and puffing and everyone's dead around him. He's like, man, that sucked ass, but hey, I'm alive. And then you get this boom, 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 boom. Oh my God. And like he turns slowly around and behind him over the horizon, there's like soldiers, tanks, like the rest of the army that he just beat coming over the hill. It's like, oh shit. Hell to Pay is so good, especially, like I mentioned, coming after the first 3 songs. It is such a palate cleanser, but in the absolute best way. And that fucking bass, dude, do we need to say anything about that?
Oh,
Cody, you might remember this. When we saw Converge live, I was like, we were in the car afterwards and we were talking about the concert. And I was like, Yeah, man, what was that one song they played with that bass lick? Like, that was crazy. And you're like, oh, Hell to Pay. I'm like, yeah, that song? Like, I remember that song. Because so much of the concert, not being a huge Converge fan, I'm like, a lot of it sounded the same. It was fast, furious, ferocious. But that song came on, I was like, oh, wow, this is a change of pace. And it's such a cool song. It's such a cool riff. I mean, it's like a monster slinking through mud and like crawling through the swamp. It's like an alligator coming up from behind you. And it's just got its eyes poking out of the water before it's about to like put you in a death grip. It's so good. It's so cool. Yeah. Do you want to say anything about it before we talk about Hope Street?
So this is, I play bass. This is unfair. I play bass. All my notes say, I'm agreeing with everything Mike said. Perfect notes. 10 out of 10, Mike. The bass tone on the song makes me want to cement my legs to the ground and worship the almighty riff. Disgusting. This is in my top 10 favorite songs ever. The ending, doom for life. The way this song ends, bro, you could melt plastic headphones to my ears and make me beg for the noise to end. This is a perfect song. Every single person who is into any kind of guitar music should hear this song. If you fucking like Aerosmith, brother, you should hear this song. Because you're going to hear this bass lick, and then you're going to go, fuck you. You're gonna go, what? And then you're going to go buy Jane Doe, and then you're going to have to get to Concubine, and you're going to go, how is that the same record? How is this the fourth song on this record? In comparison to Hope Street. Which, dude, big respect to Hope Street, because this song is like 1 minute and 5 seconds. I think if Hope Street is, because this song's good, dude. There's no like a bad song so far. And it's like, man, you know what? Hope Street happens, and it just makes me think about like a bunch of dudes in torn black jeans starting a riot. It's just like, yo, yeah, absolutely. If I took a friend to a concert and we saw Jane Doe and they played Hope Street, I would grab them by the back of their shirt and I would pull them behind me. This is the kind of song you can do a fight to, but not like a goofy old school fight. Like, oh shit, I'm at Murphy's. Fuck, I just watched my buddy get hit in the head with a Jack Daniels bottle. Oh my god. Like, and feral. That's it. That's the only way I can describe Hope Street. It just, my eyes roll in the back of my head, and for 1 minute and 5 seconds, I'm invincible.
Yeah, I think Hope Street is just absolute pure adrenaline distilled. Like you said, it's like 1 minute and something. It's like 1 minute and change, basically. But it's crushing. It destroys you. The outro in particular is like earth-shattering. It is one of my favorite expressions. It is planets colliding, which so much of these records are planets colliding. So it's good. You're gonna hear that a lot. Love the rhythms. I love Hope Street. I think it's really cool and really great. The unfortunate thing is that it's going up against Hell to Pay, and it's got no shot. Yeah. Sorry. Which is sometimes the unfortunate thing we do with this podcast is we put songs against each other that have no chance. But like sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. And in this case, this is how the cookie is destroyed. Hell to Pay wins by a long shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, to take a step back and look at both of these records, I'll say this about Jane Doe. Mike and I have both listened to a lot of heavy music. We do it for the podcast. We both love heavy music. One of my favorite styles of music is people yelling at me. Nothing sounds like this. Nothing sounds like this. And like I said from the beginning, the reason I wanted to do this matchup is because it's Jane Doe is fury encapsulated. And you get to You Fail Me, and You Fail Me in a way feels like they distilled some of that fury and turned it into pure pain. Actual, palpable heartbreak, but not in like I'm going to sit down and I'm not going to sit down and watch The Notebook. I'm going to go to the gym and not listen to music in my car. I need to feel this so goddamn good. And the level of change that comes from Jane Doe, where it's so loud. It's like your head's in a sandstorm for 40 minutes. You get to You Fail Me, and it's a little more contemplative. Still has moments where it's unbelievably heavy and chaotic, but then they pull it back every once in a while. And it's like, just think about the good times. Those are gone now. You got to move forward, but right now you're just wallowing. Which gets us to, dude, Homewrecker versus Heartless. When we saw, all right, so this is my favorite memory of this Converge show. I'm at the front, and the crowd has been lively, but it hasn't been overwhelming. And I'm like, man, maybe Converge has lost their touch, dude. I'm saying at the front, head directly in front of this bass cabinet. They play the first 5 seconds of Homewrecker, and it has turned from like a friendly contest to a fucking bloodbath. And now I'm looking behind me because I'm like, where's Mike? Because I'm worried for Mike, because I don't think Mike knows what this song does. And I turn around, and for a split second, I see him at the back of the room. And I'm like, oh, thank God my friend is safe. Because in the pit, I watch a grown man get kicked in the head. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's here. The storm has arrived, and the water is raising the boat. Oh my God. Homewrecker, dude. I mean, you want to talk about just like a pure, mischievous, devious, rowdy song. This is it, bro. This is it. This song makes me want to run off of a building onto like a marching band. Like, this song makes me want to go beat up some like jocks. As an adult, I want to drive to a high school and find some kids standing outside next to a Porsche and punch their teeth down there. Like, it makes me so unbelievably, like, I wrote in my notes, makes me want to power drill my teeth out and replace them with knives for a war. That's like, I have nothing in my bones except whiskey and pain that I'm going to give to people. Homewrecker, fuck you, everything else. Take me by the neck and send me home, dude.
Yeah, but, I mean, you get, like Concubine into Fault and Fracture, right? They flow right into each other. So you get the ending of Hell to Pain, which, if I'm not mistaken, is just like a sustained note, right? I think it's the guitar holding out a sustained note. And then out of nowhere, you get batu, 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 and then boom, just like the bomb drops, the floor caves in, you just free fall into Homewrecker. And Homewrecker is the vibe of the first couple tracks. Fast, chaotic, heavy, in your face, grinds your teeth, and it's just complete perfection. This is actually one of my favorite moments on the entire record, is Hell to Pay into Homewrecker. Because, man, it just... Also, Homewrecker... It's hard to say what my favorite song is on Jane Doe. Homewrecker might be it, though. Like, Homewrecker is so good. On an album with, like, 10 out of 10 song everywhere.
Bro, that scream he does in the beginning... I'm sorry. That's just, like, crack. He does it, and you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll get a black eye tonight. This is fine. Fuck, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, when the batu batu bat and then they come in and the scream, like, I would tackle my grandmother to the ground at that moment. Like, yeah. I would cause violence on anybody in my vicinity. It's so good.
Yeah,
I'd probably break some of her bones in the process, but
if anybody, like, it sounds ridiculous what we're saying because it sounds so over the top. Listen to this song and then tell me the very first thing you're feeling isn't uncontrollable rage. Pure, like, I have the desire to be the problem right now. Mm-hmm. I am throwing the first punch, not because I have to, but because I want to. And then, dude, you get the Heartless, though, on You Fail Me. Almost like the complete opposite. So heavy, so fast. Whereas Homewrecker is almost like a punk song that you just, like, you kicked in the dirt. Homewrecker is like, you took your nephew and you took him by the head and you shoved him to the ground. You didn't see him for a year. And it was the only thing that he had on his mind for a year. And he went to the gym and just lifted wait. Homewrecker is that. Homewrecker is your nephew coming back and beating you up at like the Christmas dinner. You get the Heartless though, and Heartless is like, oh, holy shit, how are all of my nephews like slightly bigger than me now? Like it's like a gang beating. So chaotic. This dude's so heavy. And then like you get Jake Bannon coming in, and he is in like the middle of an exorcism on this song. It's like, how do you sound like this? And then the mosh part that happens in the middle of the song. Once again, it's like I've stuck my head in a microwave, dude. Like all I'm hearing is pain. Like all I'm hearing is just like unrelenting pain. Ah, God, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Heartless to me, again, this is another unfortunate matchup. If it isn't clear, I think it might be at this point that I'm probably going to lean to Homewrecker, and to be blunt, I am. But Heartless, I mean, like you said, it's where Homewrecker is like a punk song, just like to the 11th degree. Heartless is more of just like the heavy, soul-crushing Converge you've heard a lot up to this point, and it's great. It's doing it exactly like it needs to. In particular, it's another just like crushing outro. The outros on You Fail Me are so good throughout the whole thing, and like the last one and this one are just really crushing that outro. But once again, a year from now, when we're far removed from this episode and we'll both be big Converge, you know, Cody, you've been a big Converge fan forever. I am newly anointed big Converge fan. It's one of those things where it's like, man, what do I want to listen to when I really want to listen to Converge right now? What am I going to put on? Homewrecker's going to come to mind real damn quick, and Heartless probably will not come to mind. But if I'm listening to a Converge and I'm like, man, I really remember liking You Fail Me, and Heartless comes on, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, Heartless, love this song. Homewrecker's going to live in my brain for like a good while and may never leave. That's how good it is. So have to give it to Homewrecker.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, it's very rare I always talk about this thing where I love the beauty of music that is more passionate than its end goal. Like you can tell people really wanted to punch above their weight, and the moments that elevate those records are the moments where they realize that greatness in a way. This feels like we are punching above our weight and somehow every blow is landing. You listen to Jane Doe, and it is like an out of body experience. How unbelievably crushing every section of this record is. Even the sections where you're like, yo, like coming up on Jane Doe is the Broken Vow. I don't think I should be hearing like this, dude, you know? So crazy. It is so like it's almost like comical in a way. How can something be so furious? I keep coming to that word because that's what this record feels like. Jane Doe just feels like someone who their whole life they could not bring themselves to be aggressive. And some poor person caught them on the day that they finally let it out. And for 40 minutes, they got dragged by the hair into an alley and kicked in the face by a man crying. Like an investment banker crying. But he doesn't know he's crying. You know what I mean? It's just every single brick fell right now, and it just sucks that the one guy who was asking for change caught it. Because it's mush. It's mush. And you get to the fucking Broken Vow, and it almost feels like, in a way, this moment right before a collapse, where it's like, it's almost like a heart attack. Like that's kind of what I like. Whenever I listen to the songs, it feels like a heart trying to beat while your arteries are clogging up. Crazy. And then the fucking breakdown happens, and it's like, we're dying. We are dying right now. You cannot stop it. We are dying.
Yep. The breakdown brings the heat for sure.
Bro, it makes me want to. It makes me want to elbow a stranger in the head. Like if like I was at Costco earlier, and I was in line for like 46 minutes, and I had just listened to Jane Doe, my final listen through, and all I could think about was hearing this song, and like I'm gonna give somebody a sharp elbow to the back of the head, and I'm gonna go to jail today. Now, Mike, do you have anything you want to say about the Broken Vow? Because I would like to talk about "You Fail Me" as a song specifically.
Admittedly, I have a lot more to say about "You Fail Me" as a song than "Broken Vow." You've summed up a lot of "Broken Vow." I agree that the breakdown is insane. I really enjoy that chug riff that goes straight into the outro. Once again, the outros are amazing. Converge is amazing. Surprise. But yeah, I like a lot what Broken Vow does. But what really impressed me was the next song we're about to talk about.
Yep. So, Mike, I didn't tell you this. The reason that I went to go see Converge was specifically to hear "You Fail Me," the song.
Did they play it live?
They did.
Okay.
It was the fifth song. I cried out of pure passion, because I think this is the reason "You Fail Me" is my favorite heavy record ever. You get through Jane Doe, right? And there are moments where Jane Doe allows itself to breathe. And there are moments on "You Fail Me" where it allows itself to breathe. But nothing on Jane Doe, or in my opinion, the rest of the Converge catalog, grabs the issue by the neck and puts it against the wall. And holy shit, because it doesn't feel angry, right? It's "You Fail Me" is not this angry, blistering, like I'm gonna take my hands and put them in your mouth, and I'm gonna stretch until your face falls apart. It's so desperate. This song feels like the moment before you have to be unbelievably brutal about something. And it's talking about it right now, I want to cry. That's how heavy this song is to me. Because it's not this big, aggressive, moving thing. It's this fucking riff that comes in, and then the bass comes in, and the drums come in, and it is just this person screaming into the world, "You fail me. You fail me." So many times in life, I feel like we allow ourselves to internalize and like brutalize ourselves, right? Mike is a fantastic writer. Mike has written incredible stories. He wrote a story during the pandemic that I truly loved.
No, Mike's a terrible writer.
I disagree. Mike's just shitting on himself, just like kind of this. And like I myself, I am a very deeply feeling person. When I was in a band, I wrote lyrics that kids came up to me afterwards and hugged me and cried because they meant something to them. But it's a lot to allow ourselves to feel like we can give out. We can push out, finally. And hearing somebody scream at the top of their lungs, "You fail me." Every time I hear it, every time I hear it, I want to kneel at it, because it's like, thank you. And hearing them play it live, I got to the front of that barricade because I wanted to fucking look at Jake Bannon and scream those words at him. Because he wasn't yelling at me. He was yelling about whatever this is. But to claim the flag, right? I didn't fail you. You failed me. Crazy. Crazy. I love this song, and this is the reason it's my favorite heavy record ever, because so much heavy music is outward aggression, in like in a way of where it's like, fuck you, I hate you, you suck, you're miserable, kill yourself. but a lot of it is also internalized. Like Have Heart has a lot of songs about, you know, self issues, but to have something that's so blatantly forward and strong in it, it doesn't feel like a song about redemption. It feels like someone who's on their last leg, knowing that they have to put their foot down, and it's just all coming out. Like it's, dude. I mean, not to continue to talk about, because Mike, I know you got a lot you want to say. This is the power of fucking music for me. This is exactly the same as the ending of Dark Side of the Moon. Both pull me to tears every single time I hear it, because I've been there. I've been standing in front of someone desperately trying to just get a word into the argument, and then finally when you snap, it's like, I should have just called you on it a month ago, and I hate that it got me here, you know? 10 out of 10. Fucking You Fail Me. Every time. Every single time. I've got a fucking wall flag of the You Fail Me cover. That's how much this record fucking means to me, dude. God.
Well, I appreciate all that, Cody. But what drew me, like, maybe it's because I'm a newly converted Converge fan. And maybe with several more listens, the lyrics will pull me in the same way. What really pulled me in for this listen was that you get to You Family, and you've got just like this crunchy riff that comes in. And I'm like, oh, when did I put on Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age? Because it literally sounds like a Queens of the Stone Age riff, just like on those early like Songs of the Deaf era records. But then again, I love that era of Queens of the Stone Age, so I'm not opposed to it, right? But then, as you mentioned, every other member comes in, and it just like increases like a 2,000 pounds every time the next person comes in. And Converge knows how to make an amazing riff and then just like ride it to its full potential. I like the song a lot, and I like how different it is than everything else we've heard. I think the real gem of You Fail Me for me is that it's extremely varied. In fact, the next song is like total 180 from this song, which was total 180 from the last song. Whereas Jane Doe is, even on songs like Hell to Pay, which is definitely a 180 in terms of what the album has been doing, it all sounds like the same, right? It's all the same sort of tone and sort of vision of Jane Doe. Whereas You Fail Me, it's like, hey, let's on this song totally change the whole vibe of what we're going for. And then on this next song, let's do a slow like ballad track. And it's like, okay. And it works and it's great. And I love it. So in this matchup where, yeah, Broken Vow is a lot of what Jane Doe is doing well and doing it also well. You Fail Me, the song, and both the album in this moment are doing what the album is doing well, which is its variety and pulling it off and making it work. And, you know, Cody gave his reasons for it. I agree just from the sentiment alone of this idea of like, You Fail Me. I think that's amazing. But what drew me to it and what made me give it the edge in this matchup was just the instrumentation of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. And then they continue this sense of variety where when you think about something like Converge, never in a million years does the concept of like an acoustic guitar pop up. But the next song, In Her Shadow, like the ending of You Fail Me trails down, and it's this huge. I mean, it's so big. And then you just get this like little acoustic guitar that comes in, like drenched in reverb, drenched in like space, just playing these like fucking two notes, dude. These two chords just over and over again. And then you get this like Jake comes in singing, and it almost starts to feel like a sea shanty in a way, where it's like a bunch of drunk dudes in a pub just got off a whaling boat, you know, and they're just gonna sing. But then maybe the single heaviest moment of any song ever. It's the moment the rest of the band comes in, because they don't come in and sound like Converge trying to bring a level of ferocity to it. It comes in like like the one that got away just walked into the bar and sat down next to you and you didn't know. And you just turn to your right and the whole, like the sun explodes. So cool. So cool to follow, like, objectively, like a really by the number song with out of nowhere on this blistering heavy record. Have this little acoustic she shanty that in the middle, dude, it's like, yo, it turns into like doom metal kind of, right? Where you're just like, it hits, and it hits so hard that if you're wearing headphones, like the headphones can't make sense of it. It's like the bass is so loud, the drums are so loud, the guitar is so loud, but then it doesn't get crazy. It just trails back. It's when Mike talks about cinema and cinematic moments, this is a cinematic moment, in my opinion. It is holy shit, I haven't seen this woman in 14 years and she's sitting right next to me. Why? Why did this happen today? So unbelievably good. And when I first heard In Her Shadow, I hated this song. I despised this song because I was like, it's Converge. It should be fucking, I should be front flipping onto orphans. Like, no, this song's awesome.
Yeah, this was another very difficult matchup for me. And what's funny is that they're two completely different songs.
Yeah.
But in particular, of In Her Shadow, I honestly thought that at some point Michael Gira from Swans was going to come out and start singing. This is
totally
literally 2010's era Swans is this song. Now, of course, this came out before that, so technically Swans is 2006 era this. But I'm sure at some point down the line we'll talk about Swans to some capacity. I love Swans. Swans is one of my favorite bands from the 2010s. And the reason why is because they can be very mellow, but also be super heavy at the same time. And that's what this is, right? You made a great point that it almost sounds like a sea shanty. I see it as like a boat rolling in from the fog. And it's just like a really dark day, but it's still sun's out, but it's just like a huge fog. And you're just like rolling through it. I think it's really cool. And I agree in that it's cinematic and that's what makes it great. Also, I agree that it is just like that sort of shift that You Fail Me does a lot of, where it's like the last song was crazy different. This song's crazy different. And the next song's going to be crazy different from this song. So like, I appreciate all of that. By complete literal contrast.
100% flip.
Yeah. I mean, lengthwise, it's like not even, it's another less than 2 minute song. And by the way, this is Bitter and Then Some is the other song in question. Complete different lengthwise, complete different vibe, melancholy and calm. Fuck that, dude. Let's break some skulls and kill them. Right. This song, fast, frenetic, heavy. That's like the three things that Converge does so well. And this is a moment where I had to look at the lyrics. For the other songs, whatever, right? The lyrics I don't think are that important, although they probably really are, and I probably should have. But this song in particular I had to, because there's this one moment where all the music cuts out and Jacob just screeches this word. And I'm like, what did he just say? Because to me, it sounds like, fuck! Like, it sounds like he's shouting fuck as loud as he can. He's not. Apparently, he's shouting sore, if I understand it correctly. Okay, whatever, fine, right? But when I heard it as fuck, I'm like, that is one of the coolest usages of fuck I've ever heard in a song. Because literally, you have to hear it. Even if you don't like this band, you have to hear this moment. It's just like everyone's pummeling you, and then everything cuts out. And it's like he just grabs you by the collar and just screams fuck as loud as he can in your face. And like, you get some spittle on you, and you can smell what he had for dinner. Like, that's how close he is to you. And then they just whomp you on the back of the head and come right back in. There is this part, this fucking breakdown in this song. It is Bane breaking Batman's back. Like, it is just like breaking every bone in your body. And so when it came down to comparing these two, I'm like, this again is the unfortunate nature of this show sometimes, but that's why we wanted to do the show, is because you match tracks up against each other and there's like no way to really compare them. They're both doing great things for their own particular reasons. But I did actually go with Bitter and Then Some, because that moment where he just shouts, and I want it to be fuck. Apparently it's sore. I'm going to shout fuck with him every time it comes on. That was like a total like, holy shit moment. Like, I have to run that back. That was so cool. But like I said, I think In Her Shadow is also a really cool song as well.
Yeah. No, 1,000,000%, Mike. Bitter and then some. I mean, sometimes you just hear something and it draws you into being like the worst version of yourself. And when that breakdown hits, first off, that scream that he does, the first time I heard it, my jaw dropped, because you have never heard a person say a word like this.
It does not sound human.
It's like the reason that I came to via thought process, but it's a burn victim experiencing cell regeneration and skin regeneration, tissue regeneration, is because of this and the intro of the song that's a couple songs down, where you hear it and you go, there's no way a person made that noise. That is not a human. That is a vessel for tragedy. That is a vessel for pure, unbelievable, bleak suffering that somehow just kind of, for a moment, entered a person's body, made them experience 1,000 years of unrelenting pain, and then left. Because, dude, the breakdown of this song, I wrote, and this is going to put us on a watch list. I am a plane hitting an office building. I am the cause of a tragedy. I will be the reason a child stares out of a window tonight. If I heard this song and it was The Purge, I am putting up world record numbers. Yeah, I am going in the books for the wrong reason. Yeah, I love Inner Shadow. Since I've gotten older, I've really grown to appreciation for the song. Yo, Bitter and Then Some, dude. I'm sorry. Someone's dying. I'm ending someone's life. Just like how Mike feels about the ending of White Walls, I am grabbing somebody by their jaw and flinging them across the room. And whatever happens next is on them, because they were in my fucking way.
If we ever saw Converge again and they played Bitter and Then Some, it would be a similar moment to when we saw Colors and the White Walls moment happens and I just like went blank. Like my mind just turned off. It would be that, like where he shouts that. I don't know what's going to happen. Like I will not remember the next 10 seconds of my life.
Yeah, dude, it's so, and it's like, if you're into heavy music and you're experiencing it for the first time, it's so baffling, because the rest of the record, right, he sounds like a man possessed, but you don't get a lot of these moments of where everybody else leaves and it's like they just locked him in a room, and for a split second, nothing, the craziest noise you've ever heard in your life, and then the Titanic is running you down sideways. You are held to both ends of that iceberg, and it is splitting you in the middle. And for a second, you are holding back the weight of the Titanic, and then after that, your entrails are on the side of the boat. That's how crazy it sounds. It's like, how do you do that one time, let alone 43 minutes of a record? So good. Yeah. So good, dude. Man, and then
they just keep moving with it. They just keep rolling.
Yeah.
Like, you done? No? Great, because we got a lot more for you. Because then they give you, at least on Jane Doe, Heaven in Her Arms, and on You Fail Me, Eagles Become Vultures, which is one of the coolest titles of a song ever. Just Eagles Become Vultures. Such a cool title. And for me, at least, the song matches how cool the title is, but I'll let you speak.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm going to say this. Heaven in Her Arms, that's a good song, dude. Eagles Become Vultures. Bro, I'm sorry. I've got no God when this song comes on. Men, women, children, people in wheelchairs, vegetables.
Run. Just run.
Bro, it's over. I'm like that picture of Big Bird where it's got the number and it's like, is that the year he's born? It's like, no, that's his kill streak. That's me. It starts with this. The drum fill that happens in this song, and then you are right into it. This is the best, in my opinion, the best hardcore song of all time, because it's like every moment of this song I want, if from a legitimate standpoint, very clearly I would not attack people unprovoked.
Let us be clear. We're saying a lot of big things on this episode that we are not going to do, right? It's just verbiage.
Yeah, it's just this is how aggressive music is supposed to make you feel, like this sense of invincibility in a way. Like, you know what? Yeah, I do want to get a little rough with my friends tonight. Um, Eagles Become Vultures makes me want to front flip onto every single person at a show. Like, go out of my way to. When we saw Colors, I crowd surfed fucking 800 times. It makes me want to do that for the rest of my life. That's how good this song is. Heaven in Her Arms is good. Dude, it's cool that they've kept up this intensity on Jane Doe. Breakdown's cool, right? Get it. We get it. Jane Doe is awesome. It's fast. It's slick. It sounds like the end of the world. Yo, dude, you get the Eagles, and it's like, how dare you have not put this as the first song on this record? Man, dude, I don't know, dude. It just like it feels like you're pulling your teeth out with a pair of pliers, and you're into it. Like, I just can't describe it. Like, oh.
What's amazing, Cody, is that we've been pretty much in agreement the entire way. The only place where we weren't, I think, is the first matchup, Concubine and First Light, Last Light. Everywhere else, we've been in total agreement, and I'm with you here. When it comes to Heaven, I mean, that bass is strutting. Their Slayer influence is very clear, and they've mentioned before they're big Slayer fans, so I appreciate that. And it's just another track where they're attempting to destroy the world, and I appreciate that about a Converge. They're trying to end all human life, and sometimes that's great, and I'm with you. But then they give you Eagles Become Vultures, and it's like, yeah, you know, Heaven in, excuse me. I want to get it correct. Heaven in Her Arms. I was about to mispronounce it. Heaven in Her Arms is their like mission statement. It's like, okay, here's what we want to do. Eagles Become Vultures is them putting that plan into action. And it's like, here's what we're going to do. And it just crushes. They do Propulsion so well. Like, their songs just fucking move like a freight train, and they're going 100 miles per hour. And then they give you a very For Whom the Bell Tolls outro. And just like the bow, 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 just like, and it's world ending. It is stomping, it's curb stomping people, right?
Yeah.
It's just going down the line. And it just makes you feel things you don't normally feel. And for that reason, I give it to Eagles Become Vultures.
When that guitar riff comes in, people at home, I implore you to do this. Listen to the song at slightly loud volume in your car, because you're going to get through the intro, and then this guitar riff is going to come in, and it's the ba da 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 da. Yo, I'm sorry, you're driving into traffic. Oh, that's it, man. You're finding like your local drug dealer, and you're killing him.
Yeah.
You're killing it. You're shooting the cop. Like, it's crazy. It's just that fucking level of like absurd balls of the wall. And then we get to the next matchup, which is a little bit unique, because on Jane Doe is Phoenix in Flight. But like I said at the beginning of the episode, the reason I chose the You Fail Me Redux is because it has Wolves at My Door, which was a Japanese exclusive song. For some reason, reasons that I do not understand, Japanese vinyl was able to hold more than US vinyl. So they printed only in Japan, Wolves at My Door as an exclusive song. And then people really loved the song. So they were spending a lot of money on Japanese imports of You Fail Me. And then when they did the Redux, they just agreed, let's put it on there, because it makes sense. They wrote it for the record. They just decided to keep it off it for the US release. So this matchup technically should be Phoenix in Flight versus Death King. It isn't. It's Phoenix in Flight versus Wolves at My Door, which, man, you want to talk about a bit, like, for a moment, Jane Doe kind of drops it, and you go, oh, I hope the rest of this record isn't just bland. And then you get Phoenix in Flight, and dog, yo, you're sitting at the bottom of the first atom that's ever been crushed. It's disgusting. It's unbearable. It's like it's unfathomable how heavy this song comes in. And then you're like, oh man, I can't wait for it to do the Converge thing where it's going to get real fast, right? It doesn't. Bro, it's your head is underneath of like one of those really gigantic industrial people movers that they use at like mining operations. You know, the ones that are like 20 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
They use like 10 gallons of gas every time they roll forward. Your head is under the tire and you cannot make it move any faster. It's just going and no one can hear you. So you're just like laying there like, all right, man, get it over with. Disgusting. Pure, I mean, the way the feedback comes in Phoenix in Flight, it feels like someone is ripping your larynx out. It's like someone has taken their nails and clawed their way into your Adam's apple, and they are pulling it, and you cannot get them to go faster. Crazy.
To me, Phoenix in Flight is probably the heaviest shoegaze song I've ever heard.
Ever.
Because it's very shoegazy. And if you don't know, shoegaze is a genre of music. My Bloody Valentine is very famous in the shoegaze era. So if you want to know what it is, listen to them. But I get immense shoegaze vibes here. And yet, in spite of that, it's so heavy on top of it. But what I find really unique is, like you mentioned, you expect them to get heavier, you expect them to get faster, and then they get into what I call the flight portion. Mm-hmm. I see this as the Phoenix flying through the air, right? Once again, cinematic, and I love cinematic music. And it's just like the correct choice, right? You didn't think it was, but then you hear it and you're like, wow, I don't see it any other way. This is perfect. I'm with you. Phoenix in Flight, really damn good. But the funny thing is, I would be really interested to go back in time and you just tell me, hey, we're doing You Fail Me. It's called Redux. Don't worry about that. It's just called that, right? And I would go, okay, whatever. Not knowing that it was a redone version of the album or like re-edited, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if I would feel differently about Wolves at My Door if I knew that. Because going into this, I knew Wolves at My Door was an added track to this version of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Wolves at My Door kind of sounds bonus tracky to me. It sounds like there's you mentioned the whole Japanese vinyl thing, and okay, right, if that's what it was, great. This sounds to me, though, like, hey, let's throw a bonus track from the You Fail Me tapes or the You Fail Me recordings and just throw it in there for fun. It's good. I like it. But there's something about it that I'm just like, yeah, this feels like an afterthought song. Like, there's a reason this wasn't on the original record. Which is weird that they have it placed where they have it, right? That's the story I want to hear. Why is it in its placement on the track listing? Because it feels like it's trying to like do something. Like there's a linear progression on the album. Wolves at My Door can't be the bonus track. It has to be track number whatever we're on, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a story behind that. I don't know if they just decided to throw it somewhere. It feels like there's probably something behind that. But like I said, it kind of feels bonus tracky to me. Phoenix in Flight does not. And so I give the edge to Phoenix in Flight.
Yeah, I totally agree. Phoenix in Flight. I mean, like, honestly, I would be hard pressed to find a single Converge fan who disagrees. My issue with Wolves at My Door is it feels like it's trying to be Eagles Become Vultures. And if I gotta pick one, dude, brother, it's the Eagles Become Vulture. Yeah. Yo, it's I'm sorry. Like, but for its merits, the drums are cool. Seems like there's a lot of thought for these weird little jazz chords that keep popping up. The way that I described it was, it sounds like someone keeps turning the radio from Boston to Slayer. It's like it's like someone really likes Boston, and they're like, I want to hear Hooked on a Feeling, but oh shit, Raining Blood is also on the next station, so I'm just going to keep flip-flopping. And so you get this weird momentum of like, I like these chords, and they're really like up. They're poppy. It's like, I'm Beezer Bright, I don't feel like I want to kick someone's head in. And then a second later, it's like, holy shit, I'm listening to, at that point, the gnarliest thing that's ever happened. So even if Wolves was in the traditional You Fail Me lineup, I would still pick Phoenix in Flight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is that, they're playing their sets and Jake goes, hey, guitar player, bass player, you guys just go get your drink of water. You tune for the next song. Me and the drummer got this. And that Phoenix bursts into flames and starts plummeting towards the earth in Phoenix in Flames, which I didn't think they could get more ferocious and frenetic than they were, but here we are. They decide to up the ante. And what's interesting to me, at least, is that it literally sounds like a fireball. Like the audible version of a 10-foot fireball flinging at your face, right? And And like I said, unless I'm mistaken, no guitar, no bass. It's literally just drums and Jake. Crazy to think. Now, again, the song is like 45 seconds long, so they get in and get out. But like, really interesting choice. Go ahead and say what your piece on Phoenix in Flames.
Yeah. All right. So, truly, this feels like something that we should not be hearing. This is like, I wrote an analogy, and it's an analogy that people, if they understand the material, will understand, but I will describe it a bit after too. It's like waking up and checking my phone, but the first thing that I see is when I open my phone is the hostile eyeball cutting scene. It's like that. It's like you just don't expect it, and then out of nowhere, holy fuck, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Mm-hmm. But not worse in terms of like quality. It's just like, I don't think I should be hearing a person going through this. And this is the main catalyst for the burn victim theory. Because you listen to this, and it's what I imagine someone who their medically induced coma is wearing off, and they're in like the 10 minutes of, oh fuck, I'm awake, before they can get a new IV in me. That's what this sounds like to me. This is unrelenting suffering.
It's almost it's almost like looking into an eldritch universe for 45 seconds, like where Cthulhu actually comes from, right?
Yeah.
It's like looking into that for 45 seconds.
Yeah, it's incomprehensible what this person is going through. And the way that the drums happen, there's like no sense to it. It's you are just... People talk about the sensation of being like, oh, I'm in hell. I've said Jane Doe feels like someone is in hell. This is, you were at the bottom of the bottom. You were stapled to the ground. And all you were seeing for 9 layers above you is the worst thing you can imagine. And even then, what you were imagining is indescribable, because there's still more. It's batshit crazy. It's so crazy that like you hear the song out of context and you go, yo, someone just left this on accident. Like someone just forgot to cut this person having a fucking panic attack and just put drums on it. It's like Apex Twin if he was a dick. In comparison to a real song, right? to an actual song, we get Death King. Which is crazy. It's crazy. I think this record came out initially in 2004. This does not sound like a piece of music that came out in 2004. It doesn't sound like a piece of music that came out today. I don't know. This is a moment where they do the Converge thing, and you're like, oh, this is cool. I like it. And then they find an extra layer of rug to pull out from underneath of you. It's like a Three Stooges bit where one rug goes and Curly lands and he's like, oh, woo, and then he stands up and another rug goes, and you're like, how was this there the whole time? How could this get heavier? We are 2 songs away from the end of this record. How does this stay, right? And so, Mike, I'm gonna ask you, how did you rank this?
So for me, it did come down to, okay, like you mentioned, one's actually a song with structure and form, and it's got progression. The other is just like an audible experience. Like, hey, here's a 45-second soundbite of like fire ripping you apart. Like,
yeah.
And Phoenix in Flames is kind of scary. It's kind of terrifying to listen to. Like, even though all it is really is just a dude in a studio with a mic and drums, and like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's no one's in real harm here. But man, does it sound like it. It sounds like you went on to the dark web and saw like somebody literally being killed, like in a brutal way. It's like, that's a little touch go, right? Whereas Death King, like, it's Converge doing what Converge does best, which is, once again, breakdown. The breakdown in this song is soul crushing. At times it sounds like a feral animal just got released from its cage and it's like running around the place. Really, at the end of the day, I think Death King just is the choice here, because I don't really see myself going back to listen to Phoenix in Flames unless I go, dude, you have to hear this. Like, I'm not going to put this on any playlist. I'm not going to listen to it out of enjoyment. I'm not going to be like, man, I really want to listen to Phoenix in Flames for like that part. It's only going to be, one, what does that song sound like again? And two, bro, listen to this. That's it. And I think if that's what it is, the song that actually has merit should get the edge up.
I agree. And, you know, I want to make sure that this is clear. Super, super brave choice to put this on there.
Yeah.
Crazy brave choice. Because at this point, I believe Jane Doe comes out in the year 2000. You know, people are still using slurs in hardcore songs. Like, people are getting beat up for being gay in the hardcore scene. And to think about putting something so intimately uncomfortable on this record is crazy. Because, I mean, they could have just done like a normal song. A normal Converge song. Not like a normal song. And it's just like wild to think that instead they said, let's put 42 seconds of the most realistic suffering you've ever heard. Put a drum beat on it. Okay, cool. Send it. It's like, how did you agree? Because then you get my favorite moment on Jane Doe. Not favorite song, but favorite moment. Which is the intro to Thaw. That is not a human noise. Like, that is not, if I not to like harp on this. I'm a Christian. I believe in, at least in my mindset, in a God. If there's a God, then the noise that happens at the beginning of Thaw is the most realistic depiction of a demon I've ever heard in my life.
The antithesis.
The antithesis. Bro, it is this like, I can't describe it. It just sounds like if someone put an individual pair of pliers on all of your finger and toenails and ripped them off at once. Like, that's the only way I can imagine making this noise. And it's crazy because this record is now 24 years old and nothing sounds like this. Nothing sounds this level of like pure chaos, of pure fury, of I am a dude. You woke up in the middle of a war zone. Like, this is what I imagine. We're in a very lucky place to live in the United States. Because although we have tragedies, we don't go through constant life-shifting terror on a daily basis, right? This is what I imagine a young man who lives in, like, Gaza hears on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
Just, like, you cannot comprehend this. And I don't know how you write this, because there's, like, 4 sections to the song. There's fast as shit. There's this awesome orchestral, like, do 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 do, and then this like a mosh part that comes in, and you're like, yo, I'm gonna punch my stepdad in the face. Like, it's so heavy. I'm gonna flip my car. It's so heavy. I am going to kill my local rapist. It's that heavy. It's that heavy. It makes you want to turn to Batman. I bet there's a universe where Batman hears this song, Bruce Wayne hears the song, and he goes, you know what I'm gonna do? Fight crime. And then in comparison to, like, Inner Blood, good song. It's a good song. It's Converge. It's a good song. It's the only song on You Fail Me that, like, I don't champion. But you put it against this, which, if we're going back to the comparison, like, of somebody ripping off all of your skin, right? This is you, skinless and muscleless, somehow still alive, being dipped into salt. That's what Thaw is. Thaw is you want to come close to suffering. This is it. Thankless, loveless suffering. This is it, dude. Holy shit! What a song! What a moment! Like, I can't even begin. I don't know. I've heard it live on videos and stuff, and it still sounds like the worst thing that you could go through.
Yeah, Thaw to me is just more destruction on a planetary level. It's just them. Oh, the planet's not blown apart to bits yet. All right, we'll keep going. We'll keep doing it. You mentioned the opening scream. For me, the last one, the one that's at the very end, that screech is like otherworldly. It is the antithesis of anything good in life. It is that. That is what it is distilled. Thaw is really cool. And in doing light research, I found that a lot of people really think that, well, let me reiterate. A lot of people's favorite track on Jane Doe is Thaw, which surprised me. It's not my favorite. I mean, it's still obviously amazing. It's another amazing moment on an amazing record. But I was surprised to hear that a lot of people thought it was like of that pinnacle, of that caliber. In contrast, like you said, In Her Blood, the bass is really the star of the show. I really like what the bass is doing on that song.
Yeah.
Slower song, once again, You Fail Me likes to vary its pathways and vary its ways of which it's going about itself. And I appreciate that. But there's just something about the way they're doing it on Jane Doe. And there's a reason Jane Doe is classic. It just kind of has this X factor that, at least for me, You Fail Me does not. So I gave it to Thaw as well. And what's funny about Thaw is you hear that last screech and it's just like sustained, blah, like sustained everything.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine someone who bought the CD or, just heard this back in 2000, whatever, and it's in their car and they're like, wow, what a powerful way to end this album. Cause it sounds like the end of the record. And then they go, oh, let me just look. What? This next song's 11 minutes long. And then before they even get the sentence out, the start of Jane Doe happens. And it is the heaviest goddamn thing you have ever heard in your life. And I don't know how to describe how heavy this thing is. It is heavier than you can imagine. It is like, it's like being at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It is just pressure. It's like getting crushed like a can in milliseconds. Unreal. Jane Doe is, I don't even know where to start. But
I will say this, and then I'll let you collect your thoughts for a second.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and then maybe we'll leave a little bit of pause because of how crazy this is. The first time I heard this song, it moved me to actual tears. Not to like a single movie tear. It moved me to like, I am now thinking about every tragedy in my life. That's how pummeling this song is. Because it starts and it's like all of the weight from the other songs they collected into a bucket. They put into a barrel, and then they put you on the ground and dumped all of that over you. And this is it hardening. The 11 minutes and 34 seconds of Jane Doe is you are now a part of the earth, and you will not be a part of anything else. Like, this record, Mike, came out in the year, if I remember correctly, 2000. Show me one other piece of music that sounds like this. You can't. Jane Doe gets its accolades, and personally, for a long time, I shit on Jane Doe because I like You Fail Me more. This didn't change the whole landscape. This dropped a bomb on heavy music, and then for 5 years, no one could catch up. No one makes this. This is not music that you hear in anything. Nothing sounds this gnarly. Nothing sounds this honest. And I think that's what Jane Doe and You Fail Me both do so well. They're heavy, but they're honest heavy. They're not trying to be the tough guy up the street. They're people who translate their emotions, their feelings of wants and needs and loves and regrets through this. Jane Doe feels like, I wrote this because I cannot encapsulate my words in a coherent manner right now. Sometimes you cannot move past pain until you've caused it on your own accord, right? Sometimes you have to be the one to take tweezers and rip a hangnail. Not your girlfriend, not your dog, not a nurse. Sometimes you've got to fucking bite a belt and take your knuckles and dig out an ingrown hair in your leg. And it sucks. The whole time it sucks. Or, you fucking dislocate your shoulder and you have to pop it in place. You have to run against a wall and slam it. When I was a kid, I had a tire swing, and the tire swing fell at such an angle that I had to dislocate my ankle because I fell face first into a puddle, Mike. And it was either I dislocate my ankle or I drown in this fucking puddle. That's what this song sounds like. that level of choice. So heavy, so visceral. Nothing sounds like it. Nothing ever will. They not only, Mike's got a thought brewing, and I love this. Not only did Converge write a heavy music masterpiece, they created a once-in-a-lifetime piece of art that I think every human being should experience one time. I think every single person, whether you're into smooth jazz or you like the heaviest of heavy, you should have to sit through this record and hate it. Hate it. Hate how honest this is. Because if you've ever suffered once in your life, true, unbridled suffering, this it holds you by your hair over a ravine and says, you will remember. Take it. Go home after and be thankful that you don't deal with this shit on a daily basis. That's what this fucking song is, dude.
Well, like you mentioned, sometimes you have to inflict the pain on yourself to know what pain is, or whatever your verbiage was, right? You know, sometimes you have to be in a decrepit basement bathroom and saw off your own foot, like I had to in the movie Saw when I played.
Yes.
For the joke is that Cody constantly says I look like Carrie Elways, which, all right, fair, right? Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time. I could spend a lot of time on Jane Doe, the song, and talk about why it's great. I just want to say two, bullet points. The first is that what really makes the song for me is the riff. That riff is so crushing. And I know I've said that a lot, but it is. Like, you just have to hear this thing. Just the way it's not complicated. It's a few notes, but the way it does that, like, boom, boom, like it just like slides into that and comes right back to it. Like I said, it's like buildings collapsing, it's planets colliding, it is the universe suffocating itself. The second thing is that what I think is a very educated choice by these guys is that they fade the song out, right? They don't hard stop the song, and that's the end of the record. The record fades out, and I can't tell you why I think it's brilliant, but it just is, right? It's just the correct choice to make. I don't know if the song would work as well if it was a hard cut. I don't know where you would hard cut it, but the fade out, it just like leaves you in the puddle that you've created, right? It leaves you in the pool of blood that you've just experienced, and you're like, holy shit. It is pure emotion. It's pure rage. It is pure excellence on like every fathomable level. If it's not been clear yet, when I said at the beginning of this episode that one of these records has hit like top 20 status, it's Jane Doe. Like, this record is inching its way up pretty quick, and it's because of moments like the last song and so many other moments on this album. It just is, like I said, I can't believe I didn't like this a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever. I cannot believe I've been in the dark so long. Now I see the light, and it is blinding, and I love every second of it. But, we still need to talk about Hanged Man, Cody. We can't just leave that.
Hanged Moon.
Hanged Moon.
Yeah.
Whereas In Her Shadow was very much a swan song. To me, this song is very much a Daughters song.
Dude, so Daughters.
So sounds just like them. And again, I'm sure this came out way before Daughters was like really in the groove of things. But regardless, again, how do you really compare these songs? You got an 11-minute epic, and then you've got this, which is short, it's to the point. It's heavy, admittedly, and it's doing this thing where it literally sounds like glass shattering. It's got this very like tinny sound, not tiny, but like tinny, like metallic tinny sound, where it's just like bang, 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 ding, ding, bang, bang, and it's like those bangs sound like they're hitting like metal or glass or something. It's a really cool sound, and it is a great way to end the record. I'm sorry, it's just no real contest here. I mean, how could it be?
No.
So obviously, and I think Cody's on the same boat, Jane Doe has to win.
Yeah, I mean, not to spend too much more time. Like, I very much want to hear your extended feelings about Jane Doe. You want to talk about cinematic songs, dude?
Yeah.
This might be it. Like, I don't know if we've ever had a song on the podcast. We're gonna have to do like Riders of the Storm or something to get something that has more potential than this.
Well, to be fair, to me, I think White Walls, which we have talked about extensively before, I think White Walls is another example of this, where it's a very long, hugely epic cinematic close. And, you know, being the BT Bam fan that I am, I'm going to put White Walls over Jane Doe, but that's only because I've been a bigger fan of them longer than I have of Converge. You know, 5 years from now, I maybe put Jane Doe on the same level I put Colors. Maybe
Yeah.
not. I don't know. But as I'm sitting here right now, all I can say is that Jane Doe gives me feelings that Colors gives me. Jane Doe, the song, gives me feelings that White Walls gives me. And I know I can express my love for White Walls more than I can my love for Jane Doe, but it's sort of like stumbling on like a holy relic or something. And you're seeing it for the first time and you know it's special, but you don't quite know how to describe it until like a year later after you've studied the thing. Then you can write your thesis on it, right? That's me with White Walls, and that's also me with Jane Doe. It's me stumbling on this relic and being like, I don't quite understand this thing, but I love everything about it. It is moving me to tears, or whatever expression you want to use. I really can't go off about Jane Doe in this moment, other than to say I think it's incredible. I think it's unbelievably heavy, like just unbelievably heavy. And it makes the entire record of Jane Doe, like I mentioned that X Factor. Maybe the X Factor is Jacob's performance. Maybe the X Factor is just the guys at the time they wrote this thing. Maybe, like you mentioned, the X Factor is nobody else was doing this at the time. It just sounds like nothing, and then they own the entire scene for years afterwards, right? As I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, you can't be a metal fan and not eventually run into Jane Doe. You'll see the cover of Jane Doe somewhere, which, by the way, that fucking cover of Jane Doe is one of the coolest album covers ever. When we went to that concert, and I don't know if you remember this, but that dude had the Jane Doe face on the back of his neck. I'm like, dude, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like,
yeah.
You know, You Family's cover, it's simplistic. It's just the hand. And I like the cover, but like, it's not iconic really in any sort of way. But that, like, I didn't know Converge very well. I know that cover. I've seen that cover. And you also go around metal music and you run into like best of lists, right? The best metal records of the 2000s. And you constantly see Jane Doe, if not number one, somewhere towards the top. Yeah. And there's this part of you that goes like, why is that? Like, for me, right? My own experience. I'm like, why though? Like, I've listened to this thing and I just don't see it that way. I don't get it. I get it. I get it now, right? After doing this exercise, I understand. When people say Jane Doe is the best metalcore record of all time, I believe it. Maybe I don't agree, but I see where they're coming from. When people say that Jane Doe is the greatest metal record of the 2000s, I see it, right? Colors also came out in the 2000s. And personally, I'd give it to Colors because I'm just a bigger fan of Colors. But if anyone came to me and said, hey, Jane Doe's my favorite metal record of the 2000s, I'd be like, I totally get it. Let's spend 50 minutes talking about it because I love it.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of those things. If someone came to me and said Jane Doe is the greatest metal record of all time, I kind of get it, right? It's one of those things where I now see it that way. I view it in that light of like, this is special. This is a moment in time captured perfectly. And I'm thankful that we get to hear it forever, right? Yeah. Until the day we die, we can listen to this thing. I think that's amazing. You Fail Me, it's great. I love it. I'll revisit it. But Jane Doe, that's like Mount Olympus shit right there.
Yeah, I agree. And what's very telling is even if you listen to some of the music that has come out in the last 20 years, very few things sound this honest and this visceral. Some things sound more honest. Some things sound more visceral. But neither of those combine. Jane Doe has this air about it of like, this is what we had to make, and it came out exactly how it had to. And if you listen to it, there's not a lot of cleaning on it, right? It's noisy. It's loud. A lot of the time, there's just feedback floating somewhere from a guitar or a bass or even the feedback of a drum mic. In, I think at the end, if I remember correctly, at the end of Phoenix in Flames, they're like unplugging instruments. You don't do that. You make that decision and then you run with it because that's what you wanted to do, not because someone told you to. And I think that is what's so important about this record, You Fail Me, means more to me personally, but you'd be a fool to not accept that not only did Jane Doe come and create a very specific blip in time, but it became this, it's untouchable. Any piece of music you listen to after this that is heavy is measured now. Because Converge did it honestly and viscerally. That's what is the crazy shit about this. And it's insane to think that in 24 years, no one's touched it. No one can. That you're not walking out. This is, I mean, Jane Doe, like I said, it's a masterpiece, but it's not only a masterpiece of music, but it's a masterpiece of just art. Sometimes they're one and the same. And personally, after doing this exercise, I think it sits up there in a very crazy way. It sits up there in the pantheon with like Dark Side of the Moon. Pure scope, pure absolute perfection of what it wanted to be. And that's hard, you know? Yeah. And it's I'm very thankful that I was able to be the one to turn the tide on you with Converge. Because when we went and saw Converge and you're like, I'm not a big Converge guy, I was like, that's insane. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Even thinking back on it now, I think I'm insane. And I would have loved to have seen that concert now. Right. Now being so into this, right, I would love to go back and see that again. Obviously, I can't. But if they ever come around again, you know I'm there with you, right?
Yeah.
We're definitely seeing them. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, we're getting near the end of this here, but for people at home, I beg of you, if you have not listened to both of these records, do them. They're not crazy long. Jane Doe's 43 minutes. You Fail Me is like 39.
Yeah, but they are quite a wall to climb over in terms of acceptability.
Yeah. But I think that's just like how you didn't like it when you first heard it, how I didn't like it when I first heard it. I hated Jane Doe when I first heard this record. Hated it. Despised it. I texted Eric and I said, he's my best friend. I texted him and I said, this isn't real music. Then the gates open and then the sun hits your eyes and you go, no, I just maybe needed to feel a certain way to understand it. Because this isn't meant to be like I'm driving around in a convertible with the top down, you know? Mm-hmm. Go through something and listen to Jane Doe, and maybe you'll feel a little bit better afterwards. That's what I do. That's exactly how I got into it. Through an awful breakup, sat down, listened to this record, and I said, I understand this now. I understand every second of his fury. Yep. And then You Fail Me hit me in a different way because it was in a place of where I started standing up for myself. I don't fail you, you fail me, you know? But either ways, I mean, like, masterclasses.
Very much.
And I'm glad that we agree.
We sure do. And we're hitting 2 hours at this point, so I think it's best if we just, wrap this up. I think we said the piece that we need to. Like Cody said, give it a shot. I assume most of you will not like it, just like we did, and that's understandable. But something may click. Clicked for me. It clicked for Cody back in the day. It may click for you. And I think if you can get over that wall, you'll find a very rewarding experience on the other side.
Yeah. If I can say one more thing before we go.
Sure.
This is just a broad statement about art. Sometimes the best art doesn't make sense up front. Sometimes it has to linger. Sometimes you have to go back 2 or 3 times and understand why the lingering exists. But when you finally make sense of it, you're only ever going to be thankful that you took the time to struggle through it. Good art lingers. Great art lingers. That's the beauty of art.
Well said. We're gonna close it there and close the chapter of this thing. But like any book, you'll eventually flip to the next chapter, and we'll be there for you with another episode of Album Fight Club. But until then, I'm Mike. That's Cody. Thank you for being you. Thank you for listening, and do take care.
Take care.